Colleen Maynard reporting live about my report. I chose meteorology for my project because I didn't know a lot about it and I wanted to learn more. My mom helped me contact a meteorologist, Steve Bray, meteorologist for Wish TV. Before the interview, he gave me a tour. I didn't see all the building, but I did see the three main areas where he does most of his work: the control room, the filming area, and the offices. We started off with the control room. As you can see, the control room is just walls, rows, and bundles of computers. They control three main things: the scenes, switching from the news to weather, back to the news; the graphics, the Steve Bray, meteorologist for Wish TV, that you see as Steve Bray forecasts the weather; and the cameras. The cameras are actually robotic. The cameras go in the filming studio, which is connected to the control room. I saw another meteorologist forecasting the weather in front of a green screen. He looked at TVs to the side of him for guidance. I discovered that they can research in the studio. They had an island where they could research and show graphics in a green screen. After that, we went to his office where he collects data or predictions. They partially rely on the National Weather Service for their predictions. Finally, we started the interview. What exactly is meteorology?
Meteorology is the study of weather. That is the definition of meteorology. It is the study of weather. Just like geography is the study of land masses and things like that, and geology is the study of rocks and rock formations, meteorology is the study of weather.
What do you have to do to become a meteorologist?
Lots of hard work. Typically, it's a 4-year college degree. And what a lot of people don't understand about meteorology is that it's not just the study of the sky and things like that, but it's the study of physics and math. So it is really heavy in physics and in math. And so you got to understand calculus and derivatives and all that kind of stuff. Plus you have to understand how the laws of science, how those play a role. In physics and things along those lines, how the atmosphere reacts under certain temperatures, how, why a parcel of air is raised, all those kinds of things, how gravity works, all of that.
What instruments do you use to collect data?
We have our own instruments, and then we rely on the National Weather Service and their instruments for information as well. So the National Weather Service across the country measures temperature and humidity and all those kinds of things, and we use those instruments here as well and have several weather stations throughout Indiana that will give us that information. So the National Weather Service, they're an organization that's basically hired by the government to measure the weather across the country. Okay? And then we use instruments like thermometers to measure temperature, anemometer to measure wind, barometer to measure pressure, all those kinds of things.
How do you use these instruments?
Well, for example, a thermometer that measures temperatures. It will measure the lowest temperature of the day. So let's say that we have a cold morning, or even like this morning, and we want to know how low the temperature bottomed out. A thermometer would measure that and would keep track of how low, what the lowest temperature was. Or example, a rain gauge would measure the rain that we get from this afternoon's showers. So we would be able to tell, did Indianapolis get rain? Did Noblesville get rain? Did Danville get rain? All those kinds of things. Increase. We also look at satellites. We look at radars to tell when it's going to rain. And we use computer models to predict when it's going to rain, like tomorrow or the next day or something along those lines.
What kind of instruments can you make at home?
Sure, you can make thermometers at home. You can make barometers at home. You can make anemometers at home, which anemometers measure wind. One of the ways you can do that is to, put Dixie cups, on a pencils and have them stuck together, and then it picks up the wind and it rotates when the wind is blowing. Okay. Now you're not going to be able to actually measure the wind. It's show you the principle on how it works. There are all kinds of instruments you could look up online for weather experiments and things along those lines. There's all kinds of instruments or web pages that will give you ideas for that. But again, there's barometers that you can do with a balloon over a jar. And when the temperature changes, or when the pressure changes, the balloon will inflate or deflate, and if you put a pencil on it, it will measure the change in the pressure, stuff like that.
How do you retrieve a weather balloon to collect data?
They go up as the balloon is inflated with helium, gas like that, and it goes up, and as it goes up into the atmosphere, it sends radio signals back to the National Weather Service. We don't use weather balloons, but we use the information from those weather balloons. So the weather balloons are sent up by the National Weather Service, which is the organization I was telling you about. And they send them up, and then the information comes back to the ground through radio signals, almost like somebody was talking on a radio. And that information comes back, and then we can record that information. And then the balloon will eventually pop. Because the atmosphere gets so light, the balloon expands, and then it pops. When it pops, the device then goes down to the ground. It's called a radiosonde, radiosonde, and it drops to the ground. It kind of parachutes to the ground, and when it gets down to the ground, it may fall anywhere. And it's set up to where there's a mailing label on it, to where if someone finds it, they stick it in the mailbox, and it comes right back to the National Weather Service so they can use it again.
The drought we're in. Is Indianapolis's #1 longest drought, or just close?
It is not the longest drought, but it is the longest dry spell we've had in Indianapolis in 47 years.
What causes droughts?
There's weather patterns that cause shifts in where the rain is coming down. And most of the rain this summer has been out west of us and up to the north of us. And so it has to do with the weather patterns around the U.S. or even around the world that cause drought.
I've noticed that the trees are still green, and it's October. Is this connected to the drought?
What causes that?
The changing of the leaf colors can be impacted by drought. However, it's in some ways more driven by how much sunlight the leaves are getting, how much sunlight the trees are getting. Okay? The sun, the days are longer during this, as we go into the spring and the summer, and then the days start to get shorter. And there's a process called photosynthesis, which, and the amount of sunlight that they get, that turns them green. But when we get shorter days like we're getting now, it changes how much of that sunlight they're getting on a regular basis, and the leaves change colors, and then they eventually fall off as we go into winter. Okay? So there may be an effect that the drought has on the tree colors, but it depends on the type of tree, typically, of how long they hold onto the leaves and when they change and all that kind of stuff. So right now, I'm noticing a lot more color than I noticed, say, a week ago. There's a lot more changing of the leaves now than there was a week ago. So that has a lot to do more with, in some ways, the amount of light they get and all that stuff versus the drought.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And back to you, Mr. Miller.